Hey everyone, it's Seth from the world of paleoanthropology, and today we are here with another episode of The Story of Us. We are joined by a special guest author, E.A Meigs, who has been a wonderful help to me over the last couple years. And, she has an amazing book series out that is about just the kind of stuff that we love. So I'm going to hand it over to her to introduce herself a little bit and tell us the title of the series and maybe give us a brief overview before we dig in. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
Hi, I'm E.A Meigs. I'm the author of a paleo fiction book series. Um, the subtitle would be Dreamer Books, an Ice Age Saga. It is a narration telling the story of a young Neanderthal man's life.
And that I think is something that will attract people that might be interested in other paleo fictions that we've read, but specifically because it's from the point of view of a Neanderthal and not a Homo sapiens, which I think is quite different than what we usually see. Now, I know this story is a little, the way you explained it to me was a little brief, but maybe you can try to draw out this inspiration that you got and maybe tell us what happened, and then we can go from there. Where did this come from?
I wish I knew where it came from. I'm a lifelong writer. From the time I was a little kid, I've been writing, and I never know where the story comes from. It's just one day I have this story in my head, and I have just a mad compulsion to write it down. And February 2015, the story appeared complete in my brain, and um, I was like a slave to the process. I had to get it out. And so I've been working to get a book a year out since then. And I just released the eighth and last book in the series last week.
Congratulations, that is fantastic news. So when you got the idea, you had the whole story immediately. It
The
wasn't
whole
figuring it.
story, yes, the whole thing. And believe
Wow.
me, that takes up a lot of space in your brain. It gives you a lot
Yeah, I
to get it out.
absolutely. I love creative writing, but I know when I'm doing it personally, I kind of let the characters and the story take me where they want to go. But that's also probably why I've never finished a novel either. Um, Having the whole idea, I mean, like you said, it must take up a lot of hard drive space. So
Yes,
so as we mentioned, the story is about a young Neanderthal man, and it's from his point of view.
right.
How did you put yourself into the brain of not only, someone who was alive tens of thousands of years ago, but someone who is a different species?
I think partially because I don't necessarily, and this is just my personal point of view, I don't necessarily see them as a different species with the information that we have now. To me, they are just another type of human. So I didn't think of them at all as a different type of species, and I think it helps that I come from a very small town where people, including my family, had to harvest a lot of their own food. My dad was a hunter. He was a commercial fisherman. He was an avid outdoorsman. So I was sort of raised um, with that sort of mentality already. And we did a lot of foraging. So I kind of knew the mindset. And my first real job, other than working on my dad's fishing boat, was at the Cape Cod Museum of Natural History, where I worked for 4 years. So I had a lot of background there. Um, Also, from the time I was a child, I loved camping. I would make homemade tents and just camp in the woods for as much of the summer as I could. And even as an adult, when you're getting it established and you're going sort of from, in my case, seasonal rental to seasonal rental, because those were the cheapest, I just live in the woods um, when I wasn't in a seasonal rental. So I had a lot of time in nature and working with naturalists and biologists. Um, I later went on to work for Fish and Wildlife and for forestry, and learned a lot from the scientists and biologists who worked for those entities. And I've just always had a lot of interest in nature and in history, in natural history, and in also anthropology and paleoanthropology. I've just read everything I could read on the subject. I've taken, I think, 5 university courses, partially because in the beginning I was sort of frustrated that there was so little information, because so much just doesn't last to present day. So many of the materials that ancient people used, just don't last. So I thought it would be helpful to study their bones. So I took forensic anthropology and forensic facial reconstruction. So I, looking at the bones, I could understand what I'm looking at, and understand, for example, why the Neanderthal had such big, dense bones, because their lifestyle both demanded it and, created those big, heavy bones. So that was kind of my background. I think it also helped too that my dad being a commercial fisherman, I worked in the commercial fishing industry myself for many years, and also in boat yards for many years. So I worked almost exclusively with men, and especially in the fishing industry. It's one of the most dangerous occupations in the world. As I say, when you buy fish, you buy men's lives. So like in prehistoric days, when people had to procure all their food and material goods from the wild, and of course it was an extremely dangerous business. Even in modern day, as commercial fishermen, you're taking your life in your hands every day when you go to work. And so I know the mentality, and I know the camaraderie between the men who are doing these jobs. There's just for the most part, I wouldn't say 100% of the time, I hate to make blanket statements, but there's just this rock solid camaraderie between these individuals. They have each other's backs. And sometimes, even if there's been a serious disagreement, and I mean, for really good reasons, serious disagreements, if the one needs help, you're there for them, and there's just no questions asked. You just do it, because that's what you do. So it was easy, at least from my perspective, to step into their shoes, what it must have been like for prehistoric humans. And it was just a process I really enjoyed, because it married all my interests in natural history and anthropology and paleoanthropology. So I just really loved the whole thing. I had such a wonderful time writing this book series and processing it, and even all the endless months of editing. I love the whole thing, and I'm kind of sad that it's over, but had to end sometime.
But now that it is complete, you get to show off the whole series as a whole. Your story is now out, and it is going to hopefully be exposed to many people. We're hoping that we can get, the series is, of course, I haven't completed it because the last book just came out. So we need to yeah, I need to finish it, and once I've done that, everyone I will be putting up a nice review, and you can go look at
Great.
that. But I can let you know now, you're gonna want to read this if you're a fan of, like we have said, prehistoric fiction, because that's exactly what this is. You get to live in the world and the life of humans who walked this earth tens of thousands of years ago. You get to experience their feelings, their emotions. We see through their eyes. Were you, when you were writing, transported back yourself, or were you still present? What is your writing experience like? I know some
I
people,
was
they just
very
get lost.
much, yeah, I was very much transported back. There would be times when I would be writing about, just brutal winter conditions, but it would be summertime in reality at my house. And it wasn't until I would go outside and it'd be hot and muggy and like, oh gosh, because I just get so absorbed in my writing that it feels as though there should actually be a blizzard outside. But no, I go into what I call the zone, where I just
Mhm.
really step into the mind of the main character, and I'm just able to block everything out, the modern world out, and just write um, about things from his perspective, as though I'm living it with him. And a lot of the things that I write about, I don't know if it's just um, coincidentally, because like I say, I don't know where the story came from. It was not a conscious decision to write the story. It was just there. But many of the things that I write about are similar to things that I've experienced myself. So, naturally, there's no mammoths running around here or anything, but I do have a little experience with real live elephants and walking in the woods and waking up deer first thing in the morning. And I haven't run into any lions, but I used to see bobcat almost every day. And boar and all the bears I've seen were dead by the time I saw them, because when I worked for Fish and Wildlife, you do see dead animals when you work for Fish and Wildlife, but I had contact with a lot of animals um, and some of the physical injuries I've described. I've broken a lot of bones and dislocated things, and a scar on my forehead, another one through my mouth, and some in my eyebrows, which fortunately are hidden. And you know, I've had a full, very physical life, and so I was able to. I mean, at least I hope I was able to describe his experiences from a pretty realistic point of view, because I've
Right, you've
done
lived them. Yeah.
that.
So, when it comes to series like this, there's a few groups of people, I'd say. There's
Yes.
the groups of people that are just in it for the story. They want to enjoy what it is. They don't care about factual details, etc. Then there's the side that if you use the wrong plant name during the wrong season in the wrong
Yes.
region, they're going to get on you. And then there's the people in the middle. Where would you place your series on the scale of course, there's everything changes constantly. As we just heard all the news out of Rising Star,
Yes.
things change.
Right.
So,
Right.
did you, while you were writing, was there a process where you tried to make things accurate, or were you trying to make it more of a story?
I tried to make it as accurate as I could, given the information at hand at the time I was writing it, in my understanding of that information, which is huge because there are so many interpretations of a lot of information. And as you know, there are many scientists who vehemently disagree with each other. Um, but I tried to make it as plausible as possible. But it is a story, and as I say in my introduction, it's not intended to stand up to scientific scrutiny. But I did the best I could to make it at least plausible. There were times when, to accommodate the storyline, that I did alter timelines a little bit, but I made note of that in the back of the book where I have author's notes. I tried to make note of any time that I changed things that I knew not to be um, things that are scientifically recognized. And there were times when the science changed while I was writing, because when I first started writing, the initial DNA testing for the Neanderthals said that they were at that, red-haired people. And then of course, a few years later, they found out that, that actually there was a greater variety in their coloring. So I kind of
Right.
had to write that in, and just, just trying to stay current as best I could. But I know there's people who are going to read things that aren't right, and I probably made mistakes, and but I did the best I could, and I hope people will forgive any mistakes that I do make, or things that are later disproved. Um, all I can say, it's written for entertainment purposes, not necessarily, as part of uh, a scientific study. So I just hope that if people read things and they have questions, that they'll take it as a jumping off point to follow up on their own research and come to whatever conclusions they think is appropriate.
And I think, that is a great point that books like yours, series like yours are great forays into the field. People can pick them up, get lost in this world, and get interested in Neanderthals and the Ice Age and what's going on. And next thing you know, they're in a paleoanthropology class. And that's more of what we need in the field with people who are interested and enthusiastic. And a lot of times that comes from the work of authors such as yourself. So I personally really appreciate the fact that you put so much time and effort into putting your story out there because even if it affects one person and makes them think, I wonder where we came from, and they do something in the field that helps us better understand our origins, that is a huge impact that is forever left in our history because you wrote those books. So I appreciate that you've done that. And so going forward, you know, what is your hope for this series?
Um, I'm a pretty simple person, so my hope is that people read it and enjoy it. I don't have any any grand aspirations for the series. I thought it would be nice if it could eventually make enough money that I could say offer some college scholarships or something like that. But right now, it's just a fledgling series. I'm happy if it supplements my income a little bit. And if people get enjoyment, I'm always so pleased when people write to me and tell me how much they enjoy it. Or one case, somebody had gotten a puppy and they were going to name their dog after one of the characters. I just love it.
Oh,
I just love it when people write to me or send me something. It means so much to me.
absolutely. So out of this whole experience, now that how long was it? It was 8 years that
Right. I started in February of
it was 8 years.
2018. Yes.
Um, so over this 8 year period, what do you think was A, the most challenging aspect of writing it, and B, your most uh jubilant moment?
Most challenging aspect was when I wrote the first draft of the first book and I read it through the first time and I'm like, oh boy. uh, Read like an Ice Age survival manual with a background story put in, and then nobody's going to want to read this. I'm being interested in all these things and having all these little nuggets of information that fascinate me is great. But I realized that it would be like when I read a novel that just has way too much information, way too much detail, and I'm reading through about somebody's outfit, and the lipstick matches their nails or their purse matches their shoes, and I'm like, I don't care. And I realize it's going to be people reading this, and they're going to be the same thing. I don't care. So I edited out like a third of the book, and I tried to keep
Yeah,
enough in there to make it seem realistic. Um, and to give readers the feeling, that they're seeing into the characters' lives and the processes of how they were surviving without every single little detail about how things were done.
right.
There may be a time and place for that information, but it's not in a novel. So that was my biggest challenge, was to find that happy medium where you're including enough information, um, um, but not too much or too little. And I'm sorry, I forgot your second question.
What was your most jubilant moment? What was, what moment was just, this is it. I'm so happy.
Actually, when I wrote the very end of the last book, because I'm going to put it out there, there's a twist at the very end. Um, the very end of the last book, the last couple of pages. So that was the most exciting for me because, it's the culmination of the
Right.
whole story. So
Well, I can't wait to see what that is. That sounds very enticing. Um,
I've had good feedback so far. My fingers are crossed that people.
do you see yourself writing another series?
I don't know. I do have a companion children's series that is written from the perspective of the main character's oldest son, whose name is Fox. So I have the first book out, um, and I now get to start working on the other books in that series. But that's a children's series, and it involves a lot of pictures. And I'm much slower at making artwork than I am writing. So
That
that's
is completely understandable. I could not, if I was doing the art for your book, you'd have a lot of stick figures and it would not look quite as good as I'm sure it's going to. But that's awesome because I think uh, reaching a younger audience with this topic is extremely important. I myself just got a new job as a uh, what's the word? I can't think of it, but enrichment and enrichment like tutor instructor. So things that they don't learn in school that their parents want them to learn, like anthropology. So apparently in California, where I live, actually, they actually start learning about Neanderthals in fourth grade. I learned that a few years ago. I've given a few lectures to a few little kids. It's really fun. They all
yeah,
have so many questions. You know, you bring the skulls in and it's great. But being able to have that kids series, I mean, let me know when more of that's out because I'll be able to use that just in my literal work. Um,
absolutely.
I think that is a great thing. I'm not going to say it's the only kids series out there because I know there are other anthropology kids series. I don't know their names to reference them for anyone who's listening right now, but they do exist if you have little ones that are interested. Um, you know, I think you and I can agree that anthropology plays a very important role in understanding who and how we got here and
Right.
why we are who we are. One of my the thing that I want to impart the most on children is that we are all one species, one being, one, and not
Right.
just, you know, we're getting to a point where people are still trying to classify human races as dog breeds. And we're getting way off topic right now. I'm sorry, but this will get back, I promise. Um, and so I just think it's really important that we start teaching children from a very early age that humans are humans. And I think having children's books is a great idea of doing that. My partner has been begging me to try to write my own. We will see if that
Oh, I
happens.
think you'd be wonderful at it.
Um, but yeah, I think anyone who knows about anthropology and is educated in it, if you have a chance to reach the younger minds, especially minds who are open to it, it's a beautiful opportunity. And like I said about the Dreamer Saga, this children's series you're writing, I mean, that I feel like that could have the potential for even more of an impact on future generations. And that is so critically important. So kudos to you for continuing that.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my grandsons actually had taken my first children's book to school for show and tell, and his teacher asked if she could read it in her lunch break, and she did. And she then asked if she could borrow it and read it to the class, a few pages at a time. And
Mhm.
so the kids all had the story read to them, and I was later invited to come in and speak to the class, and the kids were so great. They were really wonderful. I mean, I know my reason for being there wasn't for me to have a good time, but I had such a wonderful time with the kids. they were so engaged and so intrigued, and they had so many questions, and some really insightful questions for young kids.
Mhm.
And so I can really see that that there's such an opportunity, teaching opportunity there for children. Um, when they're, I'm not sure if it's a thing like with dinosaurs, with kids being so intrigued with dinosaurs, if it's the same thing for paleoanthropology, but they were much more interested in the subject than the some adults I run into, or maybe it's just because my family and friends know better than to get me started on the subject. They're like, don't get her talking about that. Because they know I'll talk about it for way too long. But
I
the
trust
kids
me, I
can get
get
it.
that look, but that I think that is fantastic. Um, so, we've got this book series. I'm going to make sure that there are links in the description to your websites, where to buy them, which right now they are available.
They're available right now through my website. I'm trying to set up something with Ingram where they'll be available on a worldwide basis. But I'm working on that. It's not there yet.
Okay. Okay. So I will drop the link for, yeah, I will put the link to your website in the description so everyone can go over and start purchasing your books. I did see someone asked me if there was going to be a Kindle version, and I saw somewhere else you said there was an ebook. Is it Kindle
Ebook,
or is it
yes, it's PDF.
okay?
So
It's
it can
PDF.
be
Okay,
saved
perfect.
to anybody's any electronics.
Awesome. That is great to know. So really, people, there's no reason you can't start reading this series like today. So it's I highly recommend it. She was kind enough to send me the first half of the series a few months ago, and God, it feels a lot longer ago than that now. But it was great, and I look so forward to finishing the series. It's been a very fun journey going along with the main character, and I don't want to give anything away because it it's a journey, and I think you have to take the journey.
It's
I think
definitely
you have to
a
take the
journey.
journey.
His life's journey, yes.
So I think, unless you have any final things you would like to say about this now completed saga you have created, then we will hopefully let people start reading it.
Oh, the only other thing I have to say is thank you so much, Seth, for having me on. It's a pleasure to speak with you, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk about my books.
All right. Thank you so much. And everyone, please subscribe, like, and again, be sure to check out this series of books. It's really something fantastic that will transport you back in time. If you're a fan of paleoanthropology or anything like it, anthropology, archaeology, it's going to be a series for you. I highly recommend it. Links will be in the description. See you next time.